Secretary Pollard, thank you very much for joining us. Drone coalition have been run for more than a year. How can you characterize its role in supporting of Ukraine? How much of that that you have expected by establishing this coalition? How you have much achieved during this year of operation?
Well, I think the UK and Latvia, as the co-leads of the drone coalition, should be enormously proud of the work that's been done over the last year. Yeah. We've basically taken an alliance of companies, alliance of countries, different funding streams, and created an ecosystem that is delivering high-end technology to our friends in Ukraine, that's building the confidence of people to invest in drone companies, and we can see that in the success of drone companies in Latvia and in the UK, where there's a real energy around this area. And it's not just because this is a nice thing to do, it's because this is battle-winning technology. This will make the difference about whether Ukraine stays in the fight or whether they lose. And so it's vital we continue the focus, the innovation, the creative thinking that is going into this sector. And for that reason, the coalition that we have brought together, especially with Latvian and UK leadership, I think has really shown that in the last year it can achieve great things. But we need to do more, because Ukraine is still in the fight today. So we need to provide them with more capabilities, and we need to make sure that looking towards any future peace in Ukraine, we're also supporting them so they've got the deterrent to stop Russia invading again.
On your opinion, how ready Western, NATO allies are for such a warfare that we can see in Ukraine right now, in the drone warfare, where the kill zone is more than 20 kilometers. I recently spoke with the Ukrainian counterparts, and they say that it's already for the 40 kilometers, just where some kind of a drone can kill you. I mean, how ready Europe, especially the NATO allies, are for such a type of warfare?
Well, I don't think NATO was ready to fight a Ukrainian-style war a few years ago. I think we're in a better place, but we need to do much more. So for countries like the United Kingdom, we need to integrate the lessons from Ukraine into the way we fight, the way we procure systems. That means more autonomy, more drones. It means having as standard the idea that we train our military in how to use a rifle, and then we train them how to use a drone at the same time. That we make sure that we have crewed and uncrewed systems side by side as the default. That's how we can maximize the benefits of the way NATO fights and still learn the lessons from what we're seeing in Ukraine, the innovation, the ability to spiral develop capabilities. It's really hard to spiral develop a tank in 3 weeks. You can spiral develop a drone in 3 weeks, and you can take out a tank with it. So we need to learn these lessons, and I think what we're seeing in Ukraine is Western companies perfecting their kit to make sure they stay in the fight. Ukraine are doing incredibly courageous things, but we need to make sure that every single member of NATO's armed forces are able to learn those lessons and apply them to their job. In that way, we have a stronger NATO, and we have a greater deterrence against Russia thinking they could invade any NATO member state, especially those on the eastern flank and the Baltic states in particular.
That's what you mentioned. Well, do you see that some kind of armies of the NATO, are we already, let's say, implementing those lessons learned in the Ukraine in the training process of our soldiers? I mean, because one thing is to fight, to learn to fight them as we used to do some 5 to 10 years ago. And a completely different thing is to train them to fight like the Ukrainians do that. I mean, are we implementing these lessons learned already right now? Do you see that, or we're just preparing to do that?
Across NATO, there's countries that are doing it differently. I don't think we're doing it fast enough. The United Kingdom will be setting out our new defence strategy very shortly. That will have the lessons learned from Ukraine at its very centre. But if we are honest with ourselves, the way that the war in Ukraine is being fought by Ukrainians and Russians has changed our doctrine. what is the close and the deep has fundamentally changed. Well, we can either learn those lessons, or we can potentially put our people in harm's way fighting the last war, not the current one, let alone the next one. And I think that means we've got to be more comfortable in challenging some of our sacred cows, the things that we have always done, so we'll carry on doing. Well, we need to integrate drones in our training, from the very earliest stages for recruits into our armed forces to the very senior generals and admirals. They need to understand the effectiveness of drones, be able to counter them, but also use them in their operations. And then we need our defence industries to not just develop new cutting-edge drones, the high-end drones, the one-way effectors, the missiles effectively, but then also at the other end of the spectrum, view drones as ammunition. So instead of the idea that we send a drone off and we get it back, for lots of the drones that we will need, and our doctrine must be about drones being the same as a bullet. In many cases, they're more effective than bullets and artillery shells already. So let's allow that to challenge our thinking. Let's learn from Ukraine and let's put it into practice, because Russia are putting it into practice. If there is peace and Russia redistributes their forces along the eastern flank, we'll have high-end, well-trained NATO forces on one side and battle-hardened Russians on the other that have had drones as part of their battle-fighting experience. Now, that's a big challenge to us. I don't want to be on the losing side of any fight, so we've got to make sure we invest in that technology and our people as well.
Indeed, it's very important that what you said recently. Does this gap that we have right now in the West between our doctrine levels and our training ideas how to use the drones, doesn't this gap where we haven't catch the Ukrainians, if I understand you correctly, doesn't it gives quite a big advantage to the Russians if they would like to, let's say, attack on the Poland or the Baltic states one day?
Well, it's a challenge and an opportunity.
Yep.
So I don't think a war against NATO would be fought the same way as Ukraine is fighting a war against Russia, if only because of our huge strategic overmatch in air power.
Yep.
But we do need to learn the lessons about how drones are changing the way that you target, the way that you use a combination of artillery and drone action, the way that you move people forwards, the way you defend. And I think as a collection of democracies who are more agile than Russia, we can use the experience of Ukraine to be more agile if we choose to. And I think the choice for ministers like me is we have to choose to do this. We have to make a conscious choice that says we're not going to fight yesterday's battles, we're going to learn what's happening in Ukraine, keep them in the fight, and we're going to adapt that into our own forces. Now, some of that will be huge drone swarms of FPV drones, others will be AI-powered technologies, others will be perfecting really deep strike one-way effectors. Now, all of those are things that we have companies in the NATO alliance that are brilliant at, that are supporting our friends in Ukraine to deliver. Well, we need to just integrate that into our forces. And if we do that, NATO becomes stronger, we have a greater deterrent capability. And if anyone sitting in the Kremlin wants to roll their tanks over the NATO border, they will see it in effect as battle-winning capabilities. So that is our challenge, but it stems from a very simple choice. The UK and Latvia are deciding to do this. Across NATO alliance, other nations are deciding to do it. Well, if we do it together, we'll be better at it.
Secretary Pollard, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your interview, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good speaking to you.